If it isn't Maximilian's new pet.
What? Jealous he went with an outside hire for once?
Not at all. He only bothers me with important matters.
Hey guys, my name is Mushroom, Shermathan, Shroomster, Mushroomy. I have a lot of different names, and I just really like lore. This week, we got a new short story called Vested Interests, and I'm going to be breaking it down in this video. There's a lot I want to discuss with this one in particular, because there's just a lot going on in it. There's a lot of ongoing plot points that are kind of being picked up again, everything with Max. There's a lot of stuff a lot of character moving things that are happening in the background that I also want to talk about for a bit. A lot of factions like Vishkar, even characters like Widowmaker and Moira. So there's a lot to go over. But as usual, if you like this kind of stuff, don't forget to like and subscribe. This week is going to be a big week. We have the Spotlight coming up, so I'm really excited to see where that's going to go and what gets revealed there. I'm assuming we're going to be seeing some type of cinematic at it, maybe? Everything seems to be building up to that at least. So this is kind of like a prologue of sorts. I'll do a quick little breakdown of the story if you haven't read it, and then we'll just get right into it. The story picks up with Vendetta and Max finally meeting face to face. Vendetta has gone after multiple members of the Talent Council, and he's next on the list. Max, in a desperate plea for his life, offers to join her side and take down Doomfist and Talent as a whole. But, as things go on, Vendetta doesn't seem to be willing to work with him, until he reveals his master plan. The chip that he's always had in his hand contains a lot of data on a lot of different characters and factions inside of Talent, and with this data, he's planning to overthrow Doomfist alongside Vendetta. Vendetta begrudgingly agrees to have Max work with her, but she makes it clear they're not equals, and that he is one of her loyal subjects. Max, of course, sees this as an opportunity, but decides to put his differences to the side with Vendetta, and begins to look through the lens of how they're more similar, and agrees to help her as well. The two begin their plan to take down Doomfist, take down Talon as a whole, and maybe grab some allies along the way. So, it doesn't sound like there's a lot that really happened in this short story from that little brief introduction I gave, but there is a lot of moving pictures and pieces that happen. I do want to talk about the characters Max mentioned in the story. So he talks about Moira, Widowmaker, and Vishkar as a whole. With Moira, he talks about how her genetics are really a thing that anyone can kind of fund with her, and if they do, you kind of earn her loyalty. So Moira seems to be one that's probably going to be joining Vendetta's side, at least to help take down Talon, since Vendetta seems to be able to fund her. This was something I'm kind of interested to see. It seems like they're kind of making a faction kind of form within Talon, like a civil war kind of thing. But yeah, it looks like that kind of. Another thing alongside that with Moira is, of course, Widowmaker. With Widowmaker, we got a little update on her character in this story. So everybody kind of knows she's been augmented and she takes some type of modification and drugs to keep herself going. But what's interesting with this is it's finally confirmed that she's suppressing her older memories. This is a thing that a lot of people have kind of guessed was going on with her, but it was never outright stated, I don't believe. So it is really interesting and good to finally get that confirmation. It brings up some interesting points with the Widowmaker, like what happens if she's cut off from this medication, what's going to happen to her. I think a lot of her post-Gerard memories are really going to be changing and shifting if she ever does get off this. But it doesn't sound like that's going to be happening. In fact, this does show how close Max and Widowmaker are. There's been a couple interactions in game and through a couple things like Widowmaker's mythic weapon that kind of show that Max and Widow are extremely close. But it seems that Max is the one who's basically giving her all this stuff to kind of forget her past and keep her on edge, and that's kind of her payment in a way. So I wouldn't be surprised if those two are actually probably one of the closest two people in Talon, at least, in terms of like loyalty-wise. But this could also be another way that Vendetta's going to be taking over Talon. If you have Widowmaker and Moira on your side, there's a lot you can do there. And I've said before on social media, but Max is probably the most politically important figure in Talon. He is the most outward-facing in the sense of he's probably the one who controls most of Europe. He even says it in his own short story. So it's really interesting to see where things are going to go from here with him, and with Vendetta on his side, it seems things are going to be like merging those two groups into one, and they're going to be a really big fighting force in the narrative. As for other things, the coin. Yeah, so the coin is something that was kind of brought up a couple times in the past. Every time you see Max, he has this coin. But in his last short story, which was his story, The Pocket King, we see in the story he's transferring data to something, and at the time nobody really knew what it was, but it seems that was the coin. So the coin seems to be of this chip that Max has been using as basically his final chess piece in a sense, or final moving piece to really get anyone on his side if needed. It also brings up the question that maybe Max knew Vendetta was coming. And if that's the case, I do have an idea that maybe this is why he wants Emery. So everybody knows at this point that Freya and Emery are an ongoing storyline, and Max hired Freya to go find Emery. Well, what if he wanted to get Emery on his side for whatever's coming next? I've played around with the idea in the past that maybe Max wants Freya and Emery to help him escape Talon, but maybe also it's just a really big power play to have this augmented super soldier on your side when you're fighting Vendetta, who is assumedly going to defeat Doomfist in some sense. All the pieces are kind of shifting into place, and it really does feel like Max is becoming this really big player in the ongoing narrative as a whole. But, of course, I also want to mention Vishkar. Max mentions Vishkar in the story as well, and with Vishkar, their whole storyline is kind of a bit more misunderstood. So what's going on with Vishkar right now is Symmetra is currently looking into the Founder's death, which, if you don't know, Lifeweaver told her in his short story, Rebuilding Ruins, that it was a staged kind of thing. Something went on there with the Founder's death and a horrible accident. So Symmetra's looking into it. But in the background, Vishkar as a whole is kind of falling from grace, in the sense that the world doesn't really perceive them in the way they once did. After the crisis, Vishkar was really important with rebuilding a lot of the populations and cities around the world. So with that in mind, Vishkar is kind of falling. Like, we even see in Zenyatta and Symmetra's short story that they are not really well respected there because they were taking down a lot of older ruins and even wanted to take down a statue, and they wanted to rebuild it, but of course the people there didn't want them to. So it's a really interesting thing that we've been seeing in the background with Vishkar that's kind of being brought up. And of course, I should mention also with Vishkar, something is happening with that faction. As you can see in the Thames District map and Stadium, they are building some kind of structures there, and they're getting a bigger presence in King's Row. So there is something happening with Vishkar. I'm not sure where this will lead, because I don't know if Sanjay will be a hero specifically, but it could be an interesting way to go and bring Sanjay back into the forefront as a bigger lore character, kind of like Max. Because the short story mentions Vishkar specifically, I do lean towards that as Sanjay being a bit more prevalent, so I'm interested and I want to see more of what they're going to be doing with Vishkar, because Vishkar's a faction that I really think deserves a little bit more of a spotlight. And with all of that in mind, another thing I want to mention here too is the story talks about Doomfist having loyalists in the faction. So with that, it's kind of like a moment of, okay, who's going to be a loyalist? People have kind of played around with the idea, but I do think Reaper and maybe Mauga are going to be on his side for sure. Reaper just kind of seems like he would be on his side. I mean, I'm not really sure what he really does in Talon anymore and why he's really there. But Mauga, they did have that brawl where the two of them fought. So I could see that kind of forming a bond between the two, and Mauga does respect Doomfist. So there could be that kind of avenue growing as well. The idea of Doomfist having loyalists in the faction is something I hope they expand on. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what characters, especially the Talon characters we know, choose whose side. Because with Doomfist and Vendetta, they both have very different worldviews and ideas for the organization, so Talon is going to be going through a lot, and I think it's just going to help the faction kind of grow and stand out a bit more in terms of like the characters themselves and helping them get room to really become their own characters more. I'm excited to see what they do with the Doomfist Loyalists. But aside from all that, I do think this story is a really good prelude to some big moment that's going to be coming up. Vendetta seems to be taking down Talon's council one by one. We saw she taking out that guy in her comic, and she took out Max. Well, almost took out Max, she wanted to. But aside from that, she did take out at least one more person, maybe two, judging by this story. So I hope we get to hear more about what happened with that as well. It does seem like we're building towards a really big moment, and I'm really excited for where things are going to be going in the narrative in the future. There's not a lot to discuss with this one. I just wanted to get this out there to throw my ideas and thoughts to the people, in a sense, and let you guys know about the story and everything that happened with it. What did you guys think of this one? I personally really like this one of the batches we've gotten so far. I think this is probably either second or first for me, right next to Freya and Emery's, just because of Max. I love getting Max content. He's always the most fun to really get to see and dig into a bit more. And it does seem like Max is going to become like the major lore character going forward, which I'm really excited for. Aside from all that, it seems like everything's building, and I can't wait to see what happens at the Spotlight on Wednesday this week. I'm going to be trying to stream it. We'll see how it goes. If you guys want to stop by on that, I'm going to be talking about it a bit more on social media going forward. So yeah, I'll be posting about that when it happens. Aside from that, that's all from me. I hope you guys really enjoyed this story, and as well, let me know what you guys thought of it. I always love reading your guys' comments. So yeah, I'll see you guys at the Spotlight and into the next year of Overwatch. Bye!